Nicholas Ray's 1955 masterpiece, Rebel Without a Cause, has become a cornerstone of American film history. With James Dean, Natalie Wood, and Sal Mineo leading the cast, this movie really caught the zeitgeist of that era. Teenage rebellion, defiance, and an existential quest for self. This movie shook conservative 50s America as much as Elvis Presley was doing in the world of music. It felt like a breath of fresh air at the time. But over the years, this film has developed a sinister reputation. It seems that everyone who was involved with it went on to experience personal tragedy, and in the case of all four of its main actors, an early grave. In this, our first episode of Real Nightmares, we are exploring the theory that Rebel Without a Cause was hexed by a mysterious Mexican ghost. The phrase "rebel without a cause" has grown into an iconic expression. The feeling of a lack of purpose may seem familiar to many in modern Western society, but in the immediate post-war era, it was something new and strange. And like all things new and strange, it took time for people to warm up to Rebel Without a Cause. On release, it received a mixed reception, but its reputation has appreciated enormously over time. There's little doubt that the tragic passing of James Dean before the film's release has played a major part in making this film the icon it is today. But it wasn't just Dean who suffered from the alleged curse of Rebel Without a Cause. Let's take a look at the main cases of those who were affected by it before we get into the origin of this strange malediction. The whole project began under ominous circumstances. Nicholas Ray was conducting casting interviews at his Chateau Marmont bungalow when a 17-year-old Natalie Wood arrived for her casting. Wood was young, but hardly inexperienced, having begun her acting career at age 4 and already co-starred in the almighty Christmas blockbuster Miracle on 34th Street at just 8 years old. But now she was eager to shed her image as a cute kid. She wanted the lead female role in Rebel, but Ray told her straight up that she didn't fit the part. Undeterred, she lingered through the casting of other roles, checking out the competition. However, on a night out, she wrecked her car and was hospitalized. A concerned Ray visited the teenager to see how she was, and upon his visit she quipped, "You know what the police called me? A juvenile delinquent. Do I get the part now?" Moved by this, Ray agreed, and Wood was cast. She would win an Academy Award for this role. Alongside Wood, James Dean, Nick Adams, and Sal Mineo were chosen for major parts, and all of them, like Wood, would later meet untimely and mysterious ends. Dean's death happened before either of his biggest movies hit the screens. He had just completed work on Giant with Elizabeth Taylor, and Rebel was still in post-production. Nick Adams was hired to dub the late Dean's voice in post-production. On September 30th, 1955, James Dean was in his Sherman Oaks log cabin, discussing his new Porsche Spyder with his friend Bill Hickman and landlord Nico Romanos. He had named the car the Little Bastard, largely due to its twitchy handling characteristics, a trait for which Porsche was notorious for at the time. Dean was set to drive the beautiful Porsche to Selena's car rally with mechanic Rolf Wulterich, while Hickman and photographer Sanford Roth followed in a station wagon. Life was good for Dean. He was paying $250 monthly for his cabin and loved his home, the Villa Capri. He was young, rich, and considered one of the most attractive men on the planet, and he still spent much of his time hanging with his buddies like Dennis Hopper, Natalie Wood, and Mila Nurmi, better known as Vampira, at Googie's coffee shop on Sunset. Furthermore, despite warnings from friends about his new Porsche, Dean was excited about the prospect of racing it. In fact, warnings had come from many, including Alec Guinness, who chillingly predicted, "If you drive that car, you'll be dead in a week." Ignoring the omens, Dean took the wheel with Rolf by his side, cruising down to Ventura Boulevard to gas up the car. By an eerie coincidence, they stopped at the very same gas station that would later be visited by the Manson family, immediately after the Tate LaBianca killings, where they availed themselves of the facilities to wash the blood from their hands. On his journey west on SR 46, Dean was caught and cited for speeding. Meanwhile, 23-year-old Navy vet Donald Turnipseed, heading east, attempted a left turn onto Highway 41 in his 1950 Ford two-door. He was not anticipating the Porsche's rapid approach. The ensuing collision was catastrophic. Dean died instantly, while the others sustained injuries. The car itself was considered somewhat cursed, and much deserving of its nickname. A mechanic suffered broken legs from it rolling off a tow platform. The engine, which was sold to a racing aficionado doctor, later caused his death in a crash. The curse seemed to persist, with repurposed tires from the car causing yet another accident. And finally, while on display in New Orleans, the car inexplicably disintegrated into 11 pieces of its own accord. Nick Adams and James Dean had struck a friendship on the set of a soft drink ad back in 1950. Amidst Hollywood's rumor mill, speculation about their personal lives was rampant, with many theorizing a romantic relationship had formed between the two men. True or not, his companionship with Dean was cut short that fateful day. However, his own fate was just as tragic. On February 7, 1968, Nick Adams missed a dinner with his lawyer, Erwin Roeder, who, upon finding Adams' car at his home, broke in to discover Adams deceased within. The autopsy, conducted by Dr. Thomas Noguchi, ruled it an accidentally self-inflicted death. There were various substances in his system, but no needle marks. Roeder, a former LAPD officer, took some of Adams' papers for safekeeping, only to be murdered along with his wife a month later in a random killing. Sal Mineo played Plato in the movie, and his life came to another fateful and all too early end on February 12, 1976. It happened as he returned home from rehearsal that evening, having landed a role in the play P.S. Your Cat is Dead in Westwood. It had been a lean period for Mineo. He was beginning to rebuild his career. In the alley next to his apartment, the actor was fatally stabbed by a pizza delivery man, Lionel Ray Williams, in what was claimed to be a failed robbery. Mineo's murder shocked many. He was one of the most high-profile, openly gay men in the world at the time. Many believe the killing was connected to his lifestyle and sexuality, but Williams always denied knowing who Mineo was. Natasha Zakharenka, as she was known at birth, resided at 331 Laurel Canyon Boulevard in Studio City. She took the name Natalie Wood for her role in Miracle on 34th Street, and she never stopped acting. Her mother, Marie, once consulted a psychic about her daughter's future. Feeling some intuitive motherly concern, the psychic's prediction was bittersweet. Nat would achieve stardom and wealth, but her life would tragically end in drowning. This grim prophecy came true when Natalie Wood passed away on November 29, 1981, amidst a tumultuous evening where the two men closest to her were embroiled in a fight, leaving her to meet her fate in the water. The mysterious circumstances of Natalie Wood's death during a boating trip to Santa Catalina Island with her husband, Robert Wagner, and friend Christopher Walken have puzzled many over the years. Found floating near the island, the initial verdict of accidental drowning was questioned when the investigation was reopened in 2011. But don't worry, we'll be going into much more depth on Wood, Dean, Adams, and Mineo, and their own full Hollywood mystery videos in the future. But let's return to the speculation as to why they seem to suffer this rebel without a cause curse. Warner Brothers Studio in Burbank was where a large part of the film was shot, but countless films have been shot here, so it seems an unlikely source for a curse. However, parts of the movie were shot at Griffith Observatory and in Griffith Park. These areas are notorious for their many hauntings, but one stands out above all others and is well known among locals. Griffith Park's curse is legendary, tracing back to its 19th century. There are a few variations, as with any ghost story, but the most popular concerns a wealthy landowner named Don Antonio Feliz. He lived on Rancho Los Feliz, as the park was known then, with his sister Soledad and his young, blind niece, Donna Petronilla. In 1863, Don Antonio contracted smallpox. On his deathbed, delirious and in pain, the former mayor of Los Angeles, Don Antonio Coronel, and his lawyer, Don Inocante, showed up and managed to dupe Don Antonio into bequeathing them his entire estate. Soledad and Donna were left with nothing after this dishonest ruse. When the young girl uncovered the trickery they had played on her dying uncle, she became enraged. While she had been born blind, it seems she possessed other powers. She cursed Coronel, Inocante, and the judge who signed off on the will. Most importantly to our story, she also cursed the land and any who should profit from it. Following Coronel's passing, a string of calamities befell the subsequent proprietors of Rancho Los Feliz. The widow and beneficiary of Coronel remarried, only to find herself embroiled in a contentious divorce that depleted much of her landholding. Subsequent proprietor Charles V. Howard met a grim fate, reportedly being shot to death. Leon Lucky Baldwin, another owner, encountered severe setbacks with his livestock and crops. compelling him to sell the estate to settle his mortgage debts. Thomas Bell, a financier from San Francisco, who briefly held ownership, met his demise after allegedly being pushed down the stairs of the Sonoma County home by a lover. Colonel Griffith J. Griffith, the estate's final private owner, repeatedly ventured onto the property only in daylight, as tales of hauntings began to circulate. Griffith's investment in an ostrich farming operation on the premises floundered, and he narrowly escaped an assassination attempt by an irate tenant armed with a gun. In 1896, Griffith bequeathed the majority of the remaining 3,012 acres of Rancho Los Feliz to the city of Los Angeles, intending it to become a public park. 7 years on, in 1903, Griffith faced conviction for attempting to murder his wife, Mary Agnes Christina Mesmer, during a holiday in Santa Monica. At his trial, Miss Griffith revealed that despite his public abstention from alcohol, Griffith was secretly a heavy drinker plagued by paranoid hallucinations. He was sentenced to 2 years in San Quentin, and the scandal led to the renaming of Mount Griffith to Mount Hollywood. Despite his tarnished reputation, Griffith's posthumous proposal to donate $100,000 towards the creation of an astronomical observatory, a Greek theater, and other park enhancements was eventually accepted by the city. But even that didn't escape, as the observatory has been reported as haunted by both Donna Petronia, often seen floating in a white dress, and Griffith himself. Perhaps an observatory is a logical place for a ghost to haunt, dreaming of the heavens while stuck here on Earth. In any case, it seems that the arrival of a big film production that would completely reshape the future of Hollywood movies fell well within the remit of a curse to afflict anyone who profited from the land. Or perhaps these were all just coincidental tragedies that robbed us of some of cinema's brightest stars. No observatory required to acknowledge that much. Rebel Without a Cause remains an iconic piece of cinema, albeit one with a dark underbelly. We hope you enjoyed the first episode of Real Nightmares, in which we look at some of the most difficult and deadly film productions in Hollywood history. Join us for another episode or check out this video from our main series of Hollywood Mysteries, where we track the lives of the stars who made Hollywood what it is today.